Welcome everybody. We are here live back at MFG5 Waterkant Festival 2020. When we are asked what is the Waterkant Festival is all about, then we always say it's about combining the power of startups with the traditional Mittelstand, so to say. And this way, it's a very great pleasure to offer you the upcoming session because it's directly about this topic. So I would like to introduce, first of all, our speakers for this upcoming session. We are very happy to have again Jakob Berndt with us. He's a co-founder of the Tomorrow Bank, Lemonade and Charity. He was there already in the last year, and so he's back again. Thanks, and great to have you here, Jakob. Super nice. We go on, and this whole panel, let's say, comes into action because of the effort of Evgeni Kouris. He's the founder of New Mittelstand, and he's, if I informed right now, joining us from Berlin, right?
Correct. Hello everyone.
Super cool. Great to have you. And then we also have in our panel Dr. Nadine Kammerlander, the director of the Institute of Family Business and Mittelstand. Is she with us already? Ah, yeah, great.
I am. Hello.
Great to see you again. Perfect. Nice to see you too. Okay, and then I will leave the stage and now head over to Evgeni, who will moderate this discussion on this following question: how to build a good company that survives generation. Have fun. Great to have you, and the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Alex. Hello. Very good to be online and so happy to see you all. Although we are very much distributed, it feels like we are all in Kiel and celebrating this great festival and the idea of innovation. So today we're going to be talking about how to build a good company. And it's a very interesting discussion because we have one person here from me on the left. I don't know from which side you see Jakob. He knows how to do it, and it's not the first time he's doing it. And we have another person on the right or bottom for me. It's Nadine, who actually has studied so many of these different companies that she probably has figured out the key, the silver bullet, how to recreate that. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you, Evgeni. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for joining. Thanks for taking the time. And I would love to maybe start a bit talking about why and how you arrived at this panel. So maybe talking a little bit about your individual stories. Maybe starting with ladies first. Nadine, maybe you can tell a little bit more about what exactly did bring you to studying family businesses, as this is not a very typical thing to do, in my view.
Yeah, I'm very happy to do that. So I'm now a professor of family businesses, but this has not always been my career. So I'm a physicist by training, and then I worked a couple of years in typical strategy consulting. So working with big corporate stock listed, and I liked it in the beginning, but then I found it very boring. And I also realized that this is not how I imagine the economy to be. And so this is why I decided to focus on family businesses, on Mittelstand firms, because I had the feeling that in my interviews with the owner managers that this was more a place that I liked, where I felt that this would really bring us forth. And so I did my PhD on family businesses. I did my habilitation of family businesses in St. Gallen, and I ultimately became the chair professor of family business at WHU here in Vallendar, close to Koblenz. And so since that time, I've been studying a lot of the characteristics of family businesses, of Mittelstand firms, their strengths and their weaknesses. But I think this is also what we will talk about later in this session.
Yeah, super interesting, because I think that's the reason why I also do what I do. I would call myself also a startup dropout and a corporate dropout. So I kind of drop out of both systems. And I think for the same reasons, because I thought that it has to be something better. And I think, Jakob, you already probably you can feel the same, because you started several initiatives, businesses. So maybe you can share the story how you arrived there where you are.
Yeah, I certainly try to put it in a nutshell here. So yeah, why do I do what I do? It's probably a bit cheesy, but I'd go for that often quoted statement of Gandhi. I like to be the change that I want to see in the world. I've been raised in a quite political household in the early 80s. So my parents were very active in that anti-nuclear energy movement. So long-haired hippies. I spent quite some time on the shoulders of my dad in Wendland, northern Germany. So ever since I've been, I think, quite sensitive for social and ecological issues, but it took quite a while until I brought those values to the center of my activities, actually. So after high school, I studied cultural sciences, and then I worked for a couple of years at Jung von Matt, which is one of the leading communication agencies and brand planning. But I never really felt like a typical advertising guy. I mean, I learned quite something there, and I wouldn't want to miss those years. But I never really could identify with that role of a strategic planner. So I always wanted, not really knowing what I was seeking for, but I was seeking for something more meaningful. So beside that job, I kind of opened up a gallery with a friend of mine, highly unsuccessful actually, and a little online startup, a platform for young artists, again, not really worth mentioning from a business perspective. But I really felt that I wanted to do something else. And then a former friend of mine, who I went to high school with a couple of years before, approached me with the back then very vague idea of an everyday good that should finance social projects in the global south. And that was when we started the project of Lemonade and Charity, which then became a soft drink company. It started in my kitchen, us squeezing fruits and brewing tea and stuff. And then I realized I kind of had become an entrepreneur without really wanting that before, but I had to build up a team and I had to do fundraising and all that kind of stuff. And then I ran that company for 9 years almost, and we built it up to more than 100 employees and raised more than 4 million euros for social projects. So every product we sold kind of raised money for our own foundation, and that foundation then ran social projects in the global south. And that's been an amazing adventure for almost a decade. But at some point, I felt I needed something else, and we weren't totally aligned anymore on the overall strategy of our company then. So I decided to take a new adventure. And then I ran into my co-founders, Michael and Ines, and that's now 2.5 years ago. And then we started that new project, which is Tomorrow, which I'm currently working on. Yeah, that's the past
Amazing.
20 years.
And it is kind of, it's an organic bank, I understood, right?
Yeah, it's kind of it's sustainable banking, and we try to combine the idea of sustainable banking with a very modern state-of-the-art approach. So the press sometimes calls us the unofficial kit of GLS and N26. I wouldn't put it that way, but people really love that framing. And so we really try to combine the idea of that new technological momentum that has hit the industry since a couple of years, and combine it with those very ethical, value-driven approach from the pioneers of sustainable banking. And so the big mission is to take sustainable banking out of the niche where it currently is and bring it to the zeitgeist and then to the mainstream in the long run. That's what we aim for.
I love this idea of combining different things. It's in a way something also very artistic. And as you might know, I also came from the music background, so I've been a musician for very long years, and but it's probably why I've been very excited to kind of combine different things, building bridges, and that's why maybe the new Mittelstand it was born out of the idea of combining something good from the startup side and something good from the Mittelstand, the family business side. And I know that you have also used the term zebra quite a lot in that relation to startups. And I think that most of us do connect more like an animal, a striped animal with. So maybe you can explain a little bit why are you using this zebra term and what does that mean?
Yeah, I can try my best. I brought our little pet here, if you can see it at the bottom left.
Yeah.
Here it's kind of one of our first employees. Yeah, I still refer to that very same animal. So whoever has that striped animal in mind, it's the same animal we're talking about. For us, it's there's no official definition of a zebra. We just stumbled upon that article that has been written by 4 ladies in the US. I think it was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Female tech entrepreneurs based in Portland, Oregon. And she wrote that they wrote that article. I think it was originally called "Zebras Fix What Unicorns Break," and it was more or less a big cry for a new role model amongst founders. So as you're probably aware, there's this big role model of unicorns becoming a company that's worth $1 billion or more. I know at your university, Nadine, that's a very popular thing amongst the students as well. Who's going to have the next big thing, the next unicorn? And the question is whether that role model is still something state of the art in these days, given those big global challenges we're facing. And those 4 ladies, Astrid, and I can only recall Astrid because that's the lady I met in person, Astrid Scholz. So she came up with that idea whether we don't need a new role model, and they found out that the zebra would be the perfect pick, being black and white, combining profit and charity, being real, which is most probably the biggest advantage compared to unicorns. So companies that fix real problems, and so on and so forth. So the idea is to have something that founders of a new era could identify more with, because just being worth $1 billion, which is by economic reasons obviously a huge success, but it's probably not what we should all seek for when we start founding a company. And we could strongly identify with that idea back then. We stumbled upon that article, loved it, and then we went to Austin, to South by Southwest last year, and I happened to run into her again, saw her on a panel, and we totally fell in love with that idea even more. And then we kind of thought it'd be good to kind of bring this idea, which is quite popular amongst US-based founders already, to Europe. And that's what we currently do, just spread the word about zebras, not having any zoological experience at all.
It's awesome. Also totally in love with this idea, and I think we'll talk more a little bit about it as we will play a small game. I call it, I just invented it for that particular session. It's a purpose pattern game. So we'll see how it goes, because zebra is in a way an animal from the new so-called purpose economy. We'll talk more about it in a later time of the session, but maybe now switching to Nadine, because I also met co-founder Mara actually at another festival in Denmark, another great festival, tech festival, where we were coming up with that big pledge for technology companies, and we started talking about zebra idea, and then I realized actually, there is already a term like that, and I felt quite familiar with everything she described. So what is, in your view, Mittelstand and family-owned business about, and how would you define it as someone who actually works in academia? You need to define things really clearly. How would you define Mittelstand and family-owned business?
So the family-owned businesses are in general businesses where one of your family exert influence on decision-making, so as owners or as managers. And with regard to Mittelstand, there are some definitions that rely to a specific size of the company. However, when you talk to the families out there, you feel that sometimes there are businesses that are actually quite huge, but they still define themselves as a Mittelstand firm, because they say that it's the specific attitude that they have, the specific values that actually make them a Mittelstand firm. So what is that Mittelstand about? So it is about longevity. So it's not about short-term profit maximization, but it's about building a business that lasts for not only 30 years, but maybe a century or longer. And this is actually also the reason why many of those Mittelstand and family businesses do not like the unicorns a lot. Yeah. So when they actually meet a founder who says, I'm a startup founder, many family businesses still turn around and go away because they say, okay, this is not kind of the attitude that we have. Really huge growth in the first years, and then nobody cares anymore what happens to the startup. So longevity is one thing. The second thing is actually values that those family businesses have. So when we look back into the history, we see that already in the 19th century, families engaged in something that we would now call social entrepreneurship. So I'm teaching a social entrepreneurship class at the bachelor program at WHU. And when we go back to the history and look at where does social entrepreneurship really come from, we see that, for instance, in the 19th century, there were German families like the Thyssens and others who actually invested into kind of insurances for their employees, or housing and apartments for their employees, because they felt that their business could only work well if their stakeholders are feeling well. And as another example, we have many family businesses and Mittelstand firms who are actually very sensitive when it comes to ecological concerns. So there was only yesterday, I saw on LinkedIn a post of a guy from Sweden who in his master thesis looked at carbon dioxide emissions of family businesses, and he found out that family businesses are particularly eager to reduce the emissions of their firms. So we actually have, as family firms and Mittelstand firms, we have a group of firms that actually is based on a long-term perspective and on specific values that come from the owner-manager. And this is, as I said, also the reason why there is not a lot of overlap to the unicorns. I have not known about the zebra term until a short time ago. However, I realized in my discussions with the students that there is an increasing trend of becoming aware of those issues that come along with unicorns, and that more and more founders of also my university, for instance, are interested in combining social and financial purposes. So when I started my position as a professor at WHU 5 years ago, and I took over this course on social entrepreneurship, it was less than 20 students who actually participated. Now we have more than 70, and 70, or actually 60 something, is kind of the maximum number that we let in. Then typically I admit some more. And so we end up with 70 something students who are all interested and eager about learning how to combine social and financial purposes.
So it seems to becoming increasingly popular among students and founders. And how do you think your core family businesses owners, how do they feel about that? Like you said in the previous statements that they not necessarily like startups, and sometimes they feel a little bit alienated, so to say, with the culture, with this so-called exponential growth, exponential technology, everything exponential. How do you think do they feel about Zebra, or like this new trend in the startup world? Is it more familiar to them?
Yeah, they will like this trend a lot. Yeah. So because so far, when you look at startups and how they work and on family businesses, there is on the one side, there is this big clash in, for instance, culture. Like, you know, the old patriarchs that likes to wear a suit and to use the German C and to be kind of hierarchical, which is the opposite of what you expect from a startup. However, when you go to a higher level, and you see that there is actually lots of similarity. So we learned that actually by accident. So we had an event 2 or 3 years ago at my university, the Campus for Family Business, and we had the problem that the event should be on Friday, and on Wednesday we got the note that one of our keynote speakers would not come. So this was actually very short notice, and I was a little bit desperate, and so I sat together with my team and we discussed what could we actually do. And then we had the idea, okay, let's invite some founders that have worked with family businesses or whose parents are family businesses, and let's just put them on a panel instead of the keynote. And it was a little bit of a time rush because it was Thursday morning already, and we had to convince the founders to fly in mostly from Berlin to Vallenda, which is not at the center of Germany, so to say. Within just one day, we couldn't pay any fees for them or something like that. But still, within 2 hours, we had 5 founders who were willing to come and to talk about their experiences. And in this panel discussion, it became clear that when you go to the values level, and all of those founders I would actually call zebras. When you go to the to the values level, there is so much overlap. So there is this commitment, there is this entrepreneurial passion, there is this ambition to change something and to have some impact. So we found out that when you go to the values level, there is so much overlap of family businesses and zebra startups that they actually must use it. And they must really use it, because one stream of research that I do is about innovation and digitalization on family businesses. And although I like them really a lot, the results of those studies are not very optimistic and not very positive for the family businesses, because they're just not there where they should be. So many of them have not invested enough into digitalization in the last decades. And so it will be very difficult for them to catch up now by themselves, because they don't have the money. They are located in cities in the north, like Ingelfingen or Lahnstein or Melsungen, where it's so difficult to actually get the new talent. I mean, come on, which 20-something-year-old wants to move there? So they don't have the resources to do that by themselves. So actually partnering up with startups, with younger people, different backgrounds, different education, might actually be the solution to also save our Mittelstand and save our economic background.
So Jakob, just like turning over to you, where's your office located?
We're being based in Hamburg. We're being based in Hamburg, in an area called St. Pauli. And then again, a specific part of St. Pauli is called Karolinenviertel. Is a very alternative neighborhood. And we're here in a little backyard. And we found a nice place with a rooftop terrace and stuff. So pretty classical stereotype of startup way of life, I suppose.
That sounds very inviting. And do you think that your vision about this startup is really maybe becoming the new type of Mittelstand? Like, do you once dream to like give that company a future for generations? Because the topic we wanted to discuss is how to actually build this good company that can survive generations. And we can see at family businesses, like they done it for generations in the industrial economy, but now, as Nadine mentioned, with digitization, there are some struggles and they also perceive some disadvantages. So how do you see it now as you are like on the path maybe to build a new type of Mittelstand family-owned business?
Well, yeah, first of all, I could totally underline what Nadine has said earlier about the parallels between maybe classic Mittelstand companies and zebras. I think there's a very similar kind of stewardship or ownership mentality. So there's no need to please external profit interest, at least not in the first place. And there's a very big similarity between like in terms of thinking and acting in long terms, and a strong connection to all kind of stakeholders. We're about to get certified as a B Corp, which again is a different kind of label, just like proving you're a social company or purpose-driven company or whatever. And you have to integrate a little pass in your mission statement of the company. And I think that could have been in there for the Bosch families or name it forever. So like B Corp kind of found it as something new, as a USP, but the very simple idea to not only pleasing shareholders, but everybody involved, like neighbors, your team, public, and so on and so forth. So I think we have a lot in common. And if I take a look at the other social companies or zebras or however you want to call them, I think I can see that big trend of them making sure that what they are building will last, if not to say forever, but at least in the very long run. So what we did in my former business, we created a foundation, again, something that many of those family-run businesses have been doing since generations, just to make sure that the very mission of why we do this and the why behind of all this remains in there. And I think this, now discussing this, there's a lot of stuff we have in common, and I can see a huge trend. Actually, I've been holding a keynote at Nadine's university last year, and even though I was kind of mocking them earlier with being the potential new unicorns, I could see there's a lot of interest among those top talents to create a new kind of a business type. So yeah, I'm quite optimistic that we're kind of at the beginning of something which might become at some point a new generation of Mittelstand.
Yeah, I very much hope so. And I that's one of the reasons why we do these events with Zebras Unite and New Mittelstand, because we want also on the one hand side to inspire the new founders, everyone who is watching us right now. I hope that they get a little bit of the feeling that it's not unusual and it's not weird to combine profit and purpose and do something meaningful and still run a scalable business long term. That's something that has been done for many generations before. On the other hand side, we also want to, in a way, empower Mittelstand companies to find these talents. As we say, it's also hard, Nadine, you confirmed it, to find these talents. It sounds sometimes a bit not so cool to work with a Mittelstand company. It's always cooler to work with a new startup, something super fresh, and we in the startup world are really good in reinventing to new terms and building culture. But especially this vision, really, we believe that this brings us into a new kind of new Mittelstand economy vision. And I tried to share it with you. I don't know whether you've been able to see it on the website, but I would love to hear, what do you think is like this economy in your terms? Like, what is your vision for that new economy? How would you describe that in 10 years, maybe, if a lot of startups will be Zebras and a lot of Mittelstand businesses will transform to become more radically innovative and customer-centric, what will be the economy like?
That goes towards Nadine, is that correct? Okay, I thought it was going to Nadine only. So anyway, ladies first, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I mean, that's actually, of course, a tough question. I mean, it was not we were also even not able to actually look into the year 2020, so it's very difficult to look into 10 years into the future. However, I think that if we look at what's going on right now, in the political sense, in the societal sense, with regard to ecology and environment, it is very clear that we need to change our economy. So I really hope that this year 2020 can serve as a wake-up call, also for our startups and also for our business owners and managers. And so, I mean, many of the Mittelstand firms have taken a stakeholder oriented approach instead of a shareholder oriented approach. So if it was me to wish something for the future, I would wish that this stakeholder oriented approach would become much more dominant in 10 years from now. Actually, not only among the Mittelstand firms, I mean, even more there, but also with regards to startups. And so this is one wish, more stakeholder orientation, which also includes more social purpose. And the second one is actually more cooperation. And with that, I mean cooperation among established firms, but also cooperations, Mittelstand firms and startups, because I believe that there are so many challenges lying ahead of us that those can only be solved when there is a cooperation instead of the traditional competition.
Yeah, I love that you bring this term collaboration. The term mutualism, or the value mutualism, is at the heart of the whole Zebras Unite movement, and also in a way the bridge we're building between startups and Mittelstand. It sounds easy to do, but in reality, it's quite a challenge. Any tips from your side, Jakob, how this cooperation could be working, and what Mittelstand would need to do to kind of attract talent like your startup does?
I'm not too sure whether I'm in the position to give them tips at all. But I would totally agree with you that the idea of cooperation is at the very heart of the zebra movement, and in a very strong part of our core values here. So zebras are herd animals, so they believe in cooperation much stronger than in competition only. And I think, so what could the classical family-run businesses learn? I think Nadine has mentioned it. It's being agile, it's being fast. It's about seeing changes probably coming earlier and reacting to them in a more radical way. But as has been mentioned earlier, I mean, the lines become more blurry already now. I mean, there's every second big company has its own incubator, and they all have found their ways somehow to either attract talent to where they are, or to, on the other hand, move to where the talent is. So I think there has been a lot of changes happening already. So I wouldn't know what else to add beside that fact. Yeah.
The question here, maybe to be a bit more challenging here, as much as I love the idea of collaboration, I also know that it's really tough. And I know that the idea of focusing on purpose or something meaningful in parallel to running a business is also really difficult. So it's probably like you need to be a master in entrepreneurship really to master all these different goals, because one of them is already really difficult. So maybe what do we need all kind of to do, or what do you think our society or maybe politics or systems need to change to really empower that type of collaboration and maybe move a little bit closer to that vision of being in a dazzle rather than being in a constant fight with each other?
I mean, as Nadine said, the year 2020 is probably the toughest to say. I mean, I was, on the one hand, I would have been way more optimistic before that huge pandemic has hit us all, that steel and fist. On the other hand, it's a huge chance to restart and to rethink things. And I mean, the current debates that have been all over the place during the last weeks pretty much describe already that discourse where we have to find the proper solutions. And I personally think that funding industries from yesterday with billions of public money to kind of restart for a new tomorrow is certainly not the way I would vote for. So I think it's a huge start there to kind of really boost and leverage those kind of companies and industries that leave a positive social and ecological footprint. And I mean, there's all different kind of areas where I could apply this to. And we can talk about mobility and transport, but we could talk about energy, we can talk about food production, and so on and so forth. So I think making sure that public money and governmental influence on industries and economy is now being put into the right places and not into those hands where it's always been shifted to. And yeah, I'm really, really full of hope that everybody sees this huge chance of making a major shift to a new kind of economy.
Yeah, I try to not jump too much into the topic of the pandemic, as probably everyone has talked a lot about it already. So maybe jumping to Nadine, any tips on any academic, also like statistics, or maybe things that you can recommend? What because we're talking about like kind of a game theory challenge, right? Like we try to optimize, and we know that if we don't do it well, it will be worse for both sides. So how to solve that? How to cooperate?
Yeah. So unfortunately, there is no kind of statistical numbers that can actually help us there. Actually, adding to what Jakob said, I think besides public money, it's also important that private money goes more to those sectors. And I think the one group of people that I have here in my mind is the family offices out there. So we have many wealthy families in Germany I think that many of the younger generation members of those families are actually also willing to give something back. So instead of just donating the money to, foundations that distribute the money, then it might make a lot of sense to actually use the money to invest into companies with a social purpose. There is a great TED talk of Michael Porter, the one Michael Porter of the Five Forces, and he actually has a TED talk about shared value. I do not agree with everything that he says there, but he makes a very good point about the scalability, and so investing into businesses that have a good purpose is actually a way of how to scale up very quickly. And so this is something that is very important. I think something else that is very important is actually education. So, I mean, if you look at the typical curriculum of business schools, universities, not only in Germany but all around the world, I mean, how much is social business actually there? And I don't have statistics on that, but since we have many international students that are on an exchange, that tell me we actually go to WHU because you are the one business school that offer classes on social businesses. That actually makes me feel that also universities have a lot to do there to integrate social purpose, collaboration, caring for the environment, caring for social needs better into the curriculum. Because I mean, those people that come to the universities, I mean, those are young people who can still be taught and educated. And how can we expect that if somebody has learned for more than 5 years that maximizing profit short term is the most important goal in life? How can we expect that such a person is actually working towards a social goal in the end? So I think education is also a key lever for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the word purpose. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I would just absolutely underline what Nadine said. Both topics, education in the first place, but also the fundraising issue is quite obvious. And we've been, our neighbors has been the impact hub of Hamburg. So we're really that really early stage startups, social startups, kind of do their first meters on becoming entrepreneurs and founders. And so we're in touch with early stage founders a lot here tomorrow. And we can see that the whole fundraising game, which is difficult anyways, if you start a company, is even more difficult if you do it with a social purpose. Still, even though we have this trend, and I know we don't want to talk about that pandemic too much, but it took so long before the government was really able to pull something off to support the startup scene. But then again, it really works in conventional paths. So it backs up classical VCs and so on and so forth. So there's a huge need for public as well as private money to support and leverage those who might have the ideas for a new restart of economy.
That's great. So as we all kind of believe in that direction. Sorry, there was something you wanted to add?
Yes, exactly. So there's a question in the chat in the meantime, and this question goes
Perfect.
to Jakob. It's from Linda in the live.waterkant.sh chat. And the question is to Jakob, how successful will or needs Tomorrow Bank to be until also some big players like the Deutsche Bank will start to change?
Well, that's a tough question. I mean, it's two questions in one. I think we need to reach a certain scale to become economically sustainable, because we're building a digital platform here. So we invest a lot of money to grow a team, to grow the whole tech stack, and so on and so forth. And we're far away from being profitable now, being 1.5 years from launch. So we need a certain scale. Talking about, let's say, at least 6-digit numbers of users before we can really run smoothly here from an economic perspective. And taking our role as agenda setter, I would say we've already brought some change into the industry already. Already we're a very tiny light in this huge ocean of financial players out there, and given the fact that we only have 30,000 users, we could already tell that we're invited to panels where the big boys and big girls are sitting. We're kind of, we change the perspective and the narrative a little bit. And that's probably even the biggest part of our future impact, to really kind of kick the ass of the industry strong enough, so people who are far away from us, when we talk about their reach and the numbers of customers, but they see, okay, it's possible and it's what people ask for. And so I'd say we not necessarily have to grow huge to change the industry, but we have to grow to a certain degree to really become healthy from an economic perspective, and to become independent from fundraising as well.
Great. Thanks for the question. I think is there any other question, or shall we continue with the small game as we promised in the beginning?
Yes, exactly. You can, exactly. You can continue, but just keep in mind we have like 4 to 5 minutes left, roughly.
Perfect.
So yeah, would be great if you.
Perfect.
Thanks.
We're gonna do a quiz because at the end, what you said here, to build a company, to summarize, you definitely need really good values. You need to get good vision and also some good ideas and funds. Maybe as an inspiration, if you want to read more or learn more about it, check out the book, The Purpose Economy, that I like a lot as a introductory kind of piece to that purpose economy idea. And the big thing that you can take from that is that there's always an individual that it starts with. That's the big difference. So the question to you both, maybe, first of all, what do you work for? Like, what's your individual impact? Because you have a purpose. Is it an organization? Is it society? Or is it an individual? So basically, how do you work? Rather as a doctor, changing one thing at a time, as a hospital administrator, or as a policymaker?
Nadine, go ahead.
That's actually a tough question. Yeah. So I would actually exclude the doctor thing. I do that in my research, yeah, but I would say when I do something, I typically have the group in mind that I can impact. So those are my students, for instance, or those are actually the people who read the Handelsblatt where I'm quoted. So it's not an organization, but it's kind of a group. And frankly, the bigger the group, the better. But so I would call it this intermediate level. Yeah.
And you, Jakob?
Yeah, it's tricky. I think as if you refer to me as tomorrow, as the brand, I think we probably address them all. We address the end consumer, we address the industry and the public agenda. But me as Jacob, I spent most of my time on building an impactful organization, I think. In the terms of empowering other individuals being part of this organization to really scale. So I'm the hospital administrator. I would never thought I'd say this, but I have to. So yeah, here I am running a hospital.
And why do you do that? Two options only left because we're running out of time. But harmony. So do you do it because of intervention, so that because you believe in harmony, or do you do it because of karma? Do you do it because you believe that there is some moralistic version of Newton's law?
It's getting tougher even.
Yeah.
That's
I really have problems making a decision here. Maybe it's more karma, yeah. So, but my kind of motivation is that I only have 24 hours a day, and I could actually spend that at home with my 3 kids, for instance, but I can also try to invest my time into my job. And when I invest it into my job, I really want to get the most out of it and to make the most impact. So this is actually what drives me.
And you, Jacob?
Yeah, I found it tricky. First, I'd say I'm probably on the harmony side of things because I really believe in moral role models, and on a bigger scale in political intervention, maybe, as in I don't trust the market alone. But then on the other hand, I on a personal level, I really believe in karma, and I have that gut feeling that things will be okay, and I do my very best to be part of the change, and then we take it from there.
That's a very good closing statement. I think we run out of time, but we maybe see you at in the backstage Q&A area later on. Thanks a lot for joining and for the great discussion.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, super. Thanks. For very nice to have you. And as Evgeni was mentioned, we have our backstage room in our Mattermost channel. So if you like, join us there to talk even more about it and exchange ideas. And I think it's always quite refreshing to hear like new approaches, even if they are traditional or if they have like roots to traditional like Mittelstand values. I think it's super nice to have it in the discussion and also to broaden the horizon also of the corporate people right now. So it's super nice. And if you like, you could also stay tuned because at 6 p.m. now, we have a talk about fair fashion. Mimi Zawalski, the CEO of the Avocado Store, will be on stage again. So if you like, stay tuned. And if you'd like to go on more into the other discussion, then go to our Mattermost channel. And yeah, super thanks to have you here and hope to see you soon again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Bye. Have a good weekend.
Bye.